All right, welcome to All Schuch Up, the podcast. Well, we've tried to make this one happen for a couple weeks now. We're finally making it happen today. And I'll tell you what, I'm excited. You guys know I like to talk about hard work and work ethic and getting the job done kind of thing. And I'll tell you, my guest today knows all about that. She's the Outreach and Engagement Director at Thrive Church, which in regular terms, she heads up all the projects, outreach projects, doing work, things like Shoe Project. They recently painted the skate park, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But when it comes to hard work and putting in the time, my guest today, Makaela Grinzinger.
Hi, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you bet. Wow, there's so much I want to talk about.
Let's talk about all of it.
Let's talk about all of it. The first thing I want to talk about, and I can't believe I never connected the dots before now, because I was there when you baptized your mom.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I got to tell you, I want to tell my story first. I'm going to be greedy here.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's been 24, 25 years maybe.
Sure. That
I baptized my mother.
Wow.
And it's an incredible feeling, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Man, I'm telling you. When I first got saved and started going to church, I went to Midland Assembly of God, which is now the Christian Celebration Center.
Okay, yeah. I got friends at CCC.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, great church, great church. Went there. That was my home for 6 years. And but it was, I lived in Auburn, so it was a half-hour drive, which is nothing.
Right.
Yeah, and I think they've cut it back a little bit according to my mom, but there used to be like 2-hour services.
Wow.
They were long.
Wow.
Yeah. 2 services and they were long. And I remember things like coming from my mom,
Yeah.
They had a cabin up north. Mm-hmm. So my whole life was work and school all week, go up to the cabins on weekends. Never went to church. And I got saved, started going to that church. And I heard things from my mom like, can't believe you drive all the way to Midland for church. There's nice churches right here in Auburn. Yep. Or, I can't believe you go to a church that the service lasts 2 hours. I could never do that. And that went from that to, I keep asking her to go to church.
Yeah.
And, I'm not ready yet, Rick. But when I'm ready to go to church, I'll let you take me to church.
Yeah.
To finally, hey, are you going to church this Sunday? Yeah. Can I go with you? And 2 or 3 weeks after that, I was standing up in the baptismal baptizing my mom.
That's amazing.
Crying my eyes out and smiling and cheering and crying all,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool. It was cool. I want to hear your story about baptizing your mom.
Geez, where to start? Because my story is pretty wild in and of itself. And we can get more into that later. But, man, I grew up not going to church at all. My mom would say things like, I believe in the power of prayer and I think there's a higher power, but church just wasn't something we did or something that we valued. And so I grew up with this belief that, Christians are hypocrites and there's really not a point in going to church. But then I had this group of friends that was loving me unlike the world ever had. And that was because they knew Jesus and they followed him. And so they were loving me so differently, and that introduced me to my faith into Jesus and radically transformed the way that I live my life. And it brought me to Thrive Church, which is where I have my job now. But kind of on that journey of discovering Jesus and walking in that walk with him was just something that I got to bring my mom along on the journey with, because my mom and I have been through a lot together. And so I shared everything with her, and she watched the transformation in me over those couple of years. And I can't tell you how many times I prayed on my knees begging that God would reach my mom. And she eventually accepted the invitation to church like your mom did. It was a little bit of a slower moving process, but my mom also comes from a lot of hurt. So it took a long time for her to be vulnerable and open up and let God into her life. And I'll never forget, I was already in the baptismal. I was already baptizing people with Dave that day. And we had baptized a couple of people, and someone had said something like, you know, the waters are open, like, come on down, and if there's anybody else who wants to get baptized. And my mom had this like beautiful white sweater on with a big chunky necklace, and she just walked up to me in tears and was like,
I haven't seen
yeah, she said, I'm ready. And I was like, what? I instantly started sobbing. I was like, let's go. And we baptized her, and I'll never forget, we were giggling together because we're both soaking wet in the girls' bathroom afterwards, like changing and getting ready for a picture. And I was like, but why, Mom? Like, why now? And what made you do it? And her response was just, why not? Why not? I'll never forget it.
Nice.
Yeah, beautiful, powerful thing, like to baptize anybody, but to be able to lead my mom in that way has been so profound.
Well, boy, I guess there ain't a whole lot of people that I can relate. When I read that today, I'm like, I don't know that I've met anybody else that's baptized their mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I probably have, maybe, I don't know, but anyway.
And actually, since I've come to faith, both of my grandparents on my mom's side have accepted Jesus and been baptized at their own church too. So it's been so wild to watch just how that's affected our family for the better.
And, you know, a lot of times I think we Christians, I think we're too quick to give God all the glory. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's God at work.
Yep.
No doubt about that. But a lot of times things like that happen, Makaela, yes, because of God working in their life, but because of God working in your life, and because of you walking it out and showing them, you know?
Yeah, it took real discipline, right? Like it was me having a life transformed, and then my mom seeing that in me. It didn't take me always preaching to her or saying that, you know, this is why I believe these things. She just saw my life transform in front of her, and so did a lot of people around me, that I became a new person, and there was this new thing that was really, really important to me, and it was that hard work and discipline that really led to it.
It just explodes out of you. I mean, it does every Sunday when you take the mic or anything.
Thank you.
You're just this ball of joy. I love it. I love it. And you know, I'm gonna how do they say that? A cheap plug for Thrive.
Yeah.
But, you know, I've been for a long time a part of churches. You know, I think maybe Thrive is the 5th church since Tanya and I have been married.
Sure.
That, you know, we didn't just visit for a day or two. We were a part of them churches for some time. And boy, there's something so special about Thrive, something so real and attractive to, you know, I mean, their catchphrase says it all, you know, no perfect people allowed. And I've never, first time in 5 churches, the first church I go to where I've never once felt condemned or judged. I mean, I feel loved there by the staff and the people, just loved for who I am.
That means a lot.
I used to always say, sometimes I feel like they're trying to do God's job when they're saying, you know, you shouldn't do that or you shouldn't do that. I feel like and if God is God and he can do anything, right?
Right.
Then when he's ready for example, smoking cigarettes. I had a lot of people pointing fingers at me when I was smoking cigarettes. You need to stop smoking, you know, and whatever. And I'm like, when God's ready for me to quit, I'll quit, you know?
Yeah.
And my son, he just went through treatment. And, you know, we've tried for 3 or 4 years to push him to take treatment, you know, get treatment for alcoholism and go. And I did the same thing in 1989. I went to a treatment center. But before that, I got 2 drunk drive-ins over 3 years. The courts made me go to AA meetings and stuff. Wow. They condemned me for doing it, tried to make me change. Yeah. But it was when I put myself in treatment and I wanted to. And I can look at that now and go, that was God working in me. God was whispering me, you need to do this, and I was finally ready. Yeah. You know? Yep. I didn't need nobody to tell me. Right. You know? Yep. I just needed people to love me.
Exactly.
You know, that's what I love about Thrive.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever pointing fingers or at anybody.
Yeah, and
You know?
I mean, to go back to the hard work thing, like what we're here for, that's why I love what I do at Thrive, because we work so hard to create that environment. I think that there's a lot, when you attend the church, like it's really easy to assume that that's just like a natural part of who we are, but everyone on staff and the people that lead at Thrive work so hard to make it a welcoming environment and to think through every single detail of a Sunday and what a first-time guest is experiencing. And as my job as community outreach and engagement, I get this really cool job of working with outside organizations and other community leaders that are doing good in the community, and we get to work hard together to help. I get to work hard to bring, that welcoming atmosphere to other people in the community when they aren't necessarily walking in our doors. So I love that part too.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and it's so obvious there. And anyway, so it's hard work.
Yeah,
putting all that stuff together.
It sure is.
It is.
It sure is.
Because that's another thing I noticed. I mean, from day one. I mean, I was there like week 2 of Thrive.
Wow.
I might even been the first one, but we were invited before it started by Jim and Sarah.
Sure.
We've been friends with Jim and Sarah Burkhart for a long time.
I love the Burkharts.
Yeah, and we were invited, but so I don't remember if we made it the first week or the second, but we were there from the beginning, and to see trailers full of equipment and people at 6 in the morning unloading, and then you walk in there and you think, well, this is going to be kind of chintzy, it's portable. But it's not. Mm-hmm. There is nothing low class about anything that Thrive does.
We're really good at taking a small dollar amount and stretching it really, really far.
With hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. So, all right. So, in my research, I knew you went to one church, and the pastor from there came to our church. Did that thing with one church.
Sure.
But I seen your message, so I thought I'm going to listen to a little bit of it.
Sure.
And I'm probably going to I'm probably not going to say it right. You should probably say it instead. But my life exists to serve messy and broken people.
Yeah.
Something like that you said.
Yeah.
And then you said, because that's my story.
Yeah.
So if you're willing,
sure,
I would love to hear your story, because I don't know that I have.
Okay.
And I'm sure there's a lot of people that would be touched by your story.
Yeah, I would love to tell you my story.
Let's have it.
Because that's my purpose in life, right? Is to share that. So going way back to the beginning, I actually was born in Elma, and then my parents built a house in Mount Pleasant. And so if you were to drive from Wademan into Mount Pleasant, you would drive right past the road that I used to live on. But anyway, I had a little sister. I still have a little sister, and life seemed really, really good at the beginning. But what I didn't know, obviously as an infant, was that my dad was a prescription drug addict. And so as I got older, I definitely saw more of it. My sister and I were exposed to lots of trauma along the way. And honestly, to this day, I'm shocked that Child Protective Services was never involved in my case. There was also some other forms of abuse along the way too that caught up with me as a real little kiddo. When I was 7 years old, my parents got divorced, and so we were spending like every other weekend and then a couple of weekends at a time with my dad during the summer. And he just kind of kept declining. I learned later in my adult life that he had been checked into rehab twice over the course of that time. But he just kept declining. And it became really hard. I, as a 7-8-year-old, was keeping my dad alive and keeping my sister alive and making sure that we had food on the table and making sure that my dad's cigarette was put out, and the house didn't burn down. And if he had passed out when a burner was still on, I made sure the oven got turned off. My sister had trained herself as a 5 or 6-year-old to wake up every 2 hours in the middle of the night to go check on him. So she just didn't sleep as a kid. Yeah, so that part just kind of never got better. Eventually, my mom moved us to only supervised visits because it just wasn't a safe environment. And when I was 12 years old, the November that I was 12, my stepdad, so the guy that my mom was with at the time, was killed in a motorcycle accident. So I was 12 years old. It's my first like real facing of any kind of grief or loss, and it's with the male figure in my life that I loved, and who was kind of stepping in the place of the spot that my dad wasn't filling. I still loved my dad, but I very much was in a place, and to think that I was here as a 12-year-old, I was angry and I was done taking care of him. You know, I saw that I was like, I want my dad to be a dad, and it just wasn't happening. There was a lot I wanted from him that he wasn't able to give me. And so my stepdad was killed in a motorcycle accident tragically when I was 12. And then just after I turned 13, within a 6-month period, was when my dad overdosed. And he was on life support for a month. And then they ended up pulling the plug. And he lost his life as well. So
all within a year?
Within 6 months.
6 months,
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So before I'm even a teenager, I'm facing all kinds of tragedy and loss and grief in ways that kids should never have to.
Right.
And then when I got to high school, was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. So I'm battling with that. And I don't know if you know anything about being medicated for anxiety and depression, but it's a really hard journey because it's like, try some things. Oh, this makes you really sick. Try this other thing. Oh, it makes you sick in a different way. Oh, this other one you have to eat at this specific time of day or you'll get lightheaded for the rest of the day. And I'm trying to get into a routine with it. So there were times when I would forget, and I was a kid. So yeah, it was hard. Growing up was hard. And then I got to college, which in and of itself is a testament to hard work, I guess, because I was a first generation college student. I didn't, going through high school, I never really saw that as where I would go or like it was going to be a possibility for me, but I did. I came to CMU and originally came here for teaching. I was going to be an elementary special ed teacher. And while I was here, I was also a part of a national organization that was training youth around the country. It's called ECHO. It was ECHO Youth Programs at the time. And we were leading kids in leadership all over the country. And I met this group of people through that organization that became really close friends of mine that, like I said earlier, loved Jesus. They loved Jesus, they loved church, and they were all about it. And I thought that was a little bit weird, but I was still their friend. And little did I know that they had been praying for me and like really, really wanting me to find this faith thing for myself. And so I just kept being their friend, and they kept loving me in a way that the world never had. Where I was used to rejection and people leaving and being afraid and all of this brokenness and messiness. These people were like, I love you exactly as you are. Like, just come and love and be a part of life with me. And that was so transformational for me. And then my friend Tyler Ritz was leading worship at a camp one night. And I was like, I love to hear Tyler sing, like, let's go. Little did I know, like, the Holy Spirit's there, so my life is going to be transformed.
This was a youth camp?
Yeah, it was a youth camp, but I was a college student, and we were doing a it's wild. But we were doing a training in Arkansas for like 400 youth. And the last night of the training before, I had to get on a plane at like 4 a.m. the next day. It was ridiculous. But the night before that, he was leading worship at some breakaway Assemblies of God camp in Arkansas. And I was like, I used to sing with Tyler on a performance team, and I was like, I love listening to him sing, like, let's go be friends and buddies and go hang out. And I was hearing things like, there's a good Father in heaven who loves you for the first time. I was hearing something like there's a Holy Spirit that wants to invade my life. Like, my mind was just being blown. And earlier that summer, I had actually gotten a note from my friend that had been leading worship where he said, I thank you for sharing so much of your life with me. I want you to know there's a Father in heaven who loves you. And that had been sticking with me for the last several months. And so we're sitting there, and then I'm crying because I'm realizing like how beautiful all of this is, and I'm just completely overcome. And there are all these people around me who are supporting me and loving me in this way and loving me enough to include me in this moment, in this thing that's so sacred to them. And yeah, I just remember being an emotional basket case and having a couple of different people praying over me while they sat with me. And then my friend Jessie Fox came and sat next to me, and she said, as your friend, like, I just have to ask, have you ever asked him into your heart? And I said, nope. And she said, do you want to? And I said, yeah, I think I do. And so we walked up to the altar together, and it was like this full circle. Like, all those people who had been with me since the beginning were there. And I gave my life to Jesus. And my life has never been the same since. So through a connection that those friends knew, it was like friends of a friend, knew people here in Mount Pleasant who were starting a ministry at CMU's campus where I was going to school. And those people reached out to me. There was Chi Alpha Christian Fellowship. So that was the ministry I was a part of when I was a student at CMU. They connected with me. And then about a month after I met those guys, I started attending Thrive. And so everything I know about the Bible, everything I know about Jesus has kind of, like, Thrive has been the launching point for all of that.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Praise God.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Wow.
Yeah, so I come from mess. I come from brokenness. I come from a family who just knew years and years of nothing but hurt and pain, and all of a sudden I was experiencing this joy and profound love like nothing I'd ever experienced before. And my family was seeing that around me, and the more I've gotten to know Thrive as a place for no perfect people, the more I've fallen in love with this idea and this calling that I have to share what God has done in my life with other people who have experienced similar stories.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's so awesome.
I think so too.
In the words of a good friend of both of ours, the art of precious scars. A legend made from broken pieces.
That's right.
I love stories like that. It's just, and and today more than ever, there's so many hurting people, so many broken people, and I don't want my podcast to be all about that, but I think God's using it already, and I want it to be about, I'm here, we're here for you. We're all fighting we all got our messes.
Yeah.
We all do, and trust me, I've had a lot of big messes in my life.
Sure.
And but anyway, yeah. As I'm listening to your story, that song's going through my head because that's my opening and closing song for this podcast. Is Stronger by Matt Moore, and I just love it. I love it.
He's a pretty cool guy.
He is, isn't
cool
he?
Guy.
Isn't he?
Yeah.
He was so much fun to have here as a guest.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a couple of the work projects you've led recently.
Sure.
I've been a part of all 10 shoe projects now.
That's amazing.
But I'm thinking, and in fact, I know we got a lot of people listening right now. Like, what are they talking about? Shoe projects?
Right. Yeah.
So
I get to talk about the shoe project.
Sure. Please do.
That's awesome. I love the shoe project.
Tell what it is and how much work it takes to make it happen, and so on.
Absolutely. So we just finished our 10th shoe project as a church, which is where we adopt a local elementary school and we raise funds for every single student in that elementary school to receive a brand new free pair of Adidas tennis shoes. So it runs about $36 a pair. So depending on the size of the school, it's anywhere from like $12,000 to $15,000 that we have to raise in order to do this. But on shoe day, once we have all the funds raised and everything, all of the administrative stuff that goes into it and collaborating with the schools, once we're actually there and on the ground, we line all of the chairs up in different circles so that they're facing outward, and we have 1 to 2 classrooms come in at a time, and they sit down on the seats, and they have one-on-one volunteer attention, and that volunteer gets down on their knees. And I mean, we have kids as young as like 9 and 10 years old up through people who are in their 80s serving at shoe projects, which I personally think is the coolest thing. But they get down on their knees and help the kiddo put on their brand new pair of shoes. And there's no joy and fresh confidence like putting on a brand new pair of shoes. It's so hard to describe the joy that's in that room on shoe day, because after we get their new shoes on, all the kids get to run and play, and we get to test out their shoes. And the thing that I think I love the absolute most about the shoe project is that it puts every single kid on the same level a day, you know? And you don't have to sign up to get a free pair of shoes. You don't have to be of a certain need to receive a free pair of shoes. Everyone gets a free pair of shoes, and it's
just that simple.
Yeah,
just giving you a pair of shoes for no reason.
Just because.
And trick question, but so when the people are putting on shoes, they're not preaching Jesus to the kids?
Nope.
Just loving
Actually,
the kids.
because we go into the schools, we're not allowed to preach. Yeah, and so we have handwritten notes that the kids receive in their box of shoes, and we go through all of those before they're given to the kids to make sure that there's no like Jesus or God or church references. Right. But you know, the hope for us as people who are Christians and who do attend Thrive Church is that people would know that with our name attached to it, that we're a church that cares for kids, right. And we're a church that cares for our community and really is looking to meet whatever needs we can.
Right. Oh, I've met several people who were attracted and tried out a Sunday at Thrive because of the shoe project.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many community leaders I meet with, and they're like, "Oh, you guys do the shoe thing."
Yeah.
They're like, "Yeah, we do."
It's just phenomenal. I've never actually been put shoes on, but Tanya, my wife, has, and
sure.
I don't know, you haven't you, Grace, or no? Yeah. And you know, I remember watching the videos and stuff from it and just crying, and it's just so cool.
Yeah, we cry every time. Every time.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, what's another work project?
I've been busy since before Easter with a project every other week, if not every week, doing something in the community. So my favorite ones that we've done recently, we partnered with an organization called For Art's Sake. That's in downtown Mount Pleasant, and they just exist to bring art to the community. And there's so much fun. There's such fun people. None of them are Jesus followers. None of them are churchgoers, but they're just fun and full of life. And I became friends with them through just visiting their art shop that they have downtown. And I walked in there one day because I told the lady who runs it, Megan, I was like, I want Thrive to be able to work with you guys. Like, we exist to be for our community, not just in our community. And so her and I got to talking, and she was doing this event called Paint and Skate, where she invited the community back to the skate park, because the skate park in downtown Mount Pleasant draws in a certain crowd, and it's never been known for its safety or welcomeness in the community,
or prettiness.
And so she threw this event where a food truck came down and a live band came down and played, and the community was invited to just come and paint a mural that was a paint by number on all of the blue sides of the skate park. So now it's this beautiful, like, awesome, bright, welcoming place for our community that our community actually gets to have ownership of. And the awesome part about what we get to do as a church is I got to just say, "Hey, Megan, how can I help serve you on that day?" And we just showed up with volunteers and smiling faces and a cotton candy machine, and we just got to give cotton candy away for free.
Cotton candy machine.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, it was the best. Yeah.
Now, Grace, I'm gonna put you on the spot, but that banner you painted for school that was going in is that
Downtown.
through that same organization? No,
That's
or?
through Outreach. So we actually, I just turned in some banners that we painted as a part of Thrive for Outreach as well. So those will be hung downtown, I think, this
Cool.
week.
They did them at Grace's church, or I don't know, at school.
Okay.
Yeah, church.
Yeah.
Thrive is Grace's church. You know what I meant.
Oh,
But,
it's so funny.
Yeah, it was cool. It was
That's-
cool
that's
watching
awesome.
her paint. She's quite an artist. I don't know. I don't think we can see it on a camera, but she painted that on the wall over there. For
It's
me.
impressive
The
if you
Batman.
can't see it.
Well, that's probably the worst one I got.
Yeah, she's doing well.
That's awesome.
And she's actually, her older sister Faith is doing a lot of tattoos for people.
Oh, awesome.
And Grace has done a few now, and she's
Okay.
pretty good at
You're
it.
doing tattoos too?
Yeah, I don't know if Dad's behind that 100%, but
I'll have to come back to the Schuch house for some.
yeah.
I'll have to come back to the
Yeah,
Schuch house
I
for some
actually got
ink.
one that I got this one in 1979.
Wow.
And so you can't read it, thank God, because there's names on there that are no longer.
Right.
Well, I shouldn't say that. There is one name on there that I'm still involved in his life.
Sure.
He called me Dad, but I wasn't his dad.
Sure.
He was 3 when I met his mom, and his name's Michael. Michael, I love you, man. You know I do. Him and his wife came and camped with us for a few days last
fun.
year, and yeah. Yep, he's had a couple of stepdads over the years. Actually, his dad was stabbed to death in Bay City outside of a bar when he was 2 years old.
Whoa.
Or not even 2. And then when I met him and met his mom, he was 2 and almost 3. And I was a part of his life for really only about 3 years.
Wow.
And then after his mom and I went our separate ways, every now and then I'd call up his mom and see if I could come and get him, do something.
Sure, yeah.
And he always called me Dad, but I was never his
Wow.
dad. No blood there at all. And over the years, he's had a couple of different stepdads, and he's told me some pretty crazy stories. And I won't talk about it too much, but just last summer, he's 40 years old, and just last summer he was calling me Dad and telling me how I was the only dad he'll ever call Dad. And
Wow.
yeah, it was good feeling, good
Yeah.
stuff.
That's awesome.
But anyway, Faith offered to paint a Batman head over this.
Yeah.
And it just hasn't happened yet. And
Yeah.
with what I just told you about,
Right.
well, I'm not sure. I want,
Sure,
I don't know.
sure.
Anyway, but
Yeah.
that's my only tattoo.
Gotcha. Oh, that's awesome. Did you do those?
This one my sister did, and this one my sister did, and I did this one, and the ones on my leg.
Wow. Yeah, I'm going to have to come see you guys next time I want ink, which is all the time.
Yeah?
Yes.
Oh, really?
They're just expensive, so that's why I'm not
Yeah.
covered in them.
Well, there you go. Hit up Grace and Faith. Faith's actually making a little money doing it, but she's still cheap compared
And
to,
for this one,
because she's not
20
licensed.
bucks probably.
Wow.
So I was cheap.
Yeah.
She doesn't have the credentials to
Okay.
charge a lot of money to do
Sure.
it. So,
Sure.
But anyway,
It's just supporting local business. Is what
there,
that
there you
is.
go. Yeah. It's loving friends and family. Yeah. So let's see. What else can we talk about? All right. So there we had a little break. So another thing I like to talk about, and coming from a generation that didn't admit or talk about their mental problems,
Sure.
especially men. It was back then anyway, looked at as weak. And, anyway, so let's talk about mental health a little bit.
I would
You
love
got
to.
anything you want to say about that?
Oh my gosh, so much. Something I'm very passionate about, mainly because I know the importance of working on it. I know when I've been in really bad seasons, how that's affected people that I love and people that are around me, and how much it's affected my quality of life when I'm not paying attention to my mental health. I've been in and out of therapy since I was a 3-year-old, so it's I mean, good like self-soothing techniques and triggers and how to, to have healthy coping mechanisms are words that I'm really comfortable with because of that and things that I've been working on.
I
for a
heard
long
blah,
time.
blah, blah. That's what I just heard. Go a little deeper with that. I mean,
Okay, so it really depends. I think the biggest thing that I've worked on through all of my therapy and my mental health journey are healthy coping mechanisms. And I think that's something that they talk about pretty immediately when you start with therapy and I'm not a professional, I'm not a therapist, so like don't quote me, but I can just speak from my experience that I think we all walk around with these hurts in our lives and different things that have hurt us. And so when we experience situations that are similar to those places of hurt or similar to a person that's hurt us, we can get triggered. And it's our responsibility to figure out how to cope with those triggers. And it's our responsibility to figure out how to live in a body that responds that way to a trigger, and so whatever healthy coping mechanisms look like for you, whether that's like going for a walk and breathing for a little while, or turning on some happy music, or some people take naps and that helps them unwind a little bit, whatever is a healthy version of that for you, because
and unhealthy would be like for me it was anger towards my wife, my kids.
Sure.
That's
Sure.
that was I guess that's not a coping mechanism, but
Right.
that was a result of
Sure. And it's so that anger is a response to some kind of trauma or trigger, and figuring out how to cope is like how do we step away from that? How do we realize how our brain wants to react and how we're reacting in that moment? And how do we get to where we really want to be reacting and responding? Right. And how do we bridge that gap? Because the truth is, there's stuff that I'm triggered by from past trauma that I don't realize until it happens. And so it's a whole other soapbox I could get on. But the importance of I know I'm going to be triggered sometimes. I know sometimes my mental health is going to, there are going to be things that are going to spike, and there are going to be responses that I'm going to have that I can't control. But it's not an excuse to treat people poorly. And so there have been all kinds of circumstances, especially through the pandemic and through recovering from the pandemic, where I found myself having emotional responses that I didn't want to be having. But it was on me. It was my responsibility to recognize that, to apologize, to work with people and, explain myself as best as I could. And then
not just keep it all bottled up and don't talk about it.
Exactly. And then figure out how to be better, how to grow from that situation. If I'm presented with this scenario again, how do I do better when it comes up?
Nice.
How do I love people better?
So learning
time?
about the coping mechanisms and stuff. Now,
Sure.
My subtitle is Keep Climbing, and I like to
Sure.
talk about ladders.
Yeah.
So learning what those are sounds to me like step 2 or 3 up the ladder or something.
Sure.
But in your experience, for someone older like us, not 3 years old, like when you first started going to counseling, but
Right.
someone like us, what would be a good first step if they're listening to us right now and going, it's time I do something about this or whatever. What's a good first step?
Yeah.
Just talking about it, or?
I think it's so dependent on your personal journey. It's so dependent on where you're at, because I really believe at any moment, even when you and I are at our most healthiest, we both have individual next steps that we can be taking. Mm-hmm. It's on us to figure out what those are and how to be taking them. So when it comes to mental health specifically, if you're not in therapy or you feel like you're struggling right now, my best advice is to talk to somebody. Anybody. Yeah. Just tell someone.
Matt and I talked about that, and
Yeah.
Matt and I both made ourselves available, and
Yeah.
I will always say that,
Yeah.
I'm a safe place. If you don't know who to talk to, or you don't, that's the important first step that I really want to send home with the folks is talk about it. Talk
Yeah.
with somebody.
Yep,
And,
absolutely.
You know, I mean, this is my coping mechanism.
Yeah, yep.
Behind this here. You know,
Uh-huh.
when I have a bad day at work or when I'm feeling stressed out or angry, nothing, you know, I come down here and I put on some Matt Moore music and I start pumping
Yep.
iron, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was so proud of my son a couple weeks ago. Well, in fact, the day we were recording Matt Moore's episode, he was struggling with some stuff. 19
Sure.
years old, and he was getting angry.
Yeah.
And he come outside and he says, "Call me when Matt gets here. I'm going for a run."
Good for him.
And he took off and went for a run.
Yeah.
You know, and he come back,
yeah,
calm down,
better.
and all better.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
And so yeah, that's awesome. But
Yeah.
make sure you talk to someone.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And that's what did it for me.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, like I said, it wasn't cool to admit you have problems or whatever. But so it took me a lot longer in life. I'm pretty old before I finally started talking about that stuff. But
Yeah,
it's just
for
such
sure.
a relief and such a feeling of strength to get it out there and,
Yep.
you know.
Absolutely. It's a legend being built from broken pieces,
Yeah,
right?
there you go. Hoot, hoot. We love you, Matt.
We do.
And do you miss Jason?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah?
I do sometimes. Yeah. Yeah.
If you haven't watched Matt and I's episode when he was
Yeah.
at it, where we poked at Jason a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, about changing the country music.
Yeah, he
Boy.
deserves to be picked on pretty relentlessly.
Yeah, for that.
one.
That was, wow.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Listen to more Matt Moore.
Yeah.
Jason.
Yeah, we're praying for you, buddy. I love his. At first I listened to a little bit and his podcast, you
Sure.
know, and I'm like, I don't know if that's for me, and and then the more I thought about it, I'm like, okay, I'm speaking to people now, or speaking with people,
Right.
not to them,
Right.
and I probably should try to watch and listen, and I've been listening a lot, and.
Good.
Good stuff, Jason. I love it. Keep doing what you're doing. So, I don't know. I think, have we covered enough?
Sure. Unless
happy?
you've got other questions for me. I mean, I could talk more about mental health stuff. I could talk more about church. I could talk to you all day, Rick.
Yeah, you're doing a great job. No, I think, I probably got a bunch of more questions, and then when you're halfway back to Mount Pleasant, I'll remember, I was going
Right.
to ask her about this.
Right.
And that's an area I'm working on. I'm getting better at it, but I need to be a little more organized, write a lot more notes.
Sure.
And,
Yeah, we were just talking about next steps. So there you go. Next step for
next
you.
step is to
Yeah. Keep climbing.
keep climbing. I love it. So, can you give us no, you can't. Was it 2 weeks he said he's going to release the drawings?
Oh, yeah, for the new
church?
building.
For the new
yeah.
building?
Can I give you a sneak peek? Is that what you were asking for?
Yeah, well, no, something other than the utility room?
Honestly, if I was able to, don't tell Dave I said this, I would show you. But I genuinely, full honesty, don't have
gonna-
access to any of it.
Right.
Yep.
No, and I wouldn't
I've
expect
seen
it to.
them, but I also know that it's not finalized yet. So I don't even think Dave has final pictures or
We're
videos yet.
we're gonna go start walking or even running the trail and stuff
Yeah.
through there. And
I wouldn't recommend
know.
running them yet because there's a lot of rubble still.
that's fine.
But
You ever been to Bundy Hill? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we go. Joshua and I have run that a few times
awesome.
now. And
Yeah.
it's risky, but
it's true.
that's part of a good workout, especially for balance and stuff. If you gotta
Yeah.
watch your every step and
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, we're
Yeah.
gonna go out and walk the trails because every time I drive by there, I'm trying to picture where the borders are, and I thought one of these days I gotta just stop and go walk the trail. And,
Sure.
but that's exciting.
Yeah,
that's
it's
so
really
exciting
exciting.
that and again, there's some ownership, after been going there that long.
Yeah.
And to see stuff like that happen feels really good.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Wait. I want to be on the painting crew and stuff on the indoor
Okay.
So,
Noted.
painting, yeah.
Fantastic.
In fact, we were going to Grace Church
Mm-hmm.
when they moved and bought the old
Oh, yeah.
restaurant.
Yeah.
And moved and I spent a lot of hours there.
I'm sure.
Painting and tearing down walls and changing things.
Well, now that I know that you like to paint, I'll keep it
Well,
in mind
yeah.
for do good stuff too.
You know, I mean, some people are really good at this and that, and if there's one thing, you know, I've worked in building maintenance my whole life.
Wow.
Now, just the last 12 or 13 years now, I've been working in auto parts.
Okay.
But up until then, that's all I ever did was building maintenance. And specifically for a few years, I painted. That's when I made the most money. That's what I'm best at.
Sure.
I love painting. I'm fast. I'm good.
Yeah.
I can brush around the ceiling and roll out a wall. And
That's awesome.
You know, people, friends and stuff want me to come paint their house, right?
Yeah.
And I'll say, oh, I'll come over and paint your house, but you have to leave.
Get out of my space.
For me,
Yep.
as a professional painter, trying to
Right.
paint with somebody who's just painting their living room, you know, and
Yeah.
takes them forever. And
Yep.
just go
Yep.
away.
Let me do my
come back
thing.
in 2 hours, I'll be all done and gone. But anyway.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, I'll make it official on air.
Yeah.
I want to do some painting at the new buildings.
Okay. Got
Yeah,
it.
You can count on me for that.
Okay. Deal.
Yeah.
We'll sign you up.
We'll bring the cameras and we'll make a podcast out of it because that'll be hard work.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, on that note, one more thing we got to do before we say goodbye.
Deal.
Okay, everybody gets one of these.
Oh.
Now, are you familiar with the phrase "keep digging"?
Sort of, but go
Sort of.
ahead and explain it to me.
Keep climbing, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Keep moving forward. Keep working hard to progress.
I love that.
Keep digging.
Yeah.
You know, you're digging for gold. Keep digging. Keep
Yeah.
digging. So, keep digging. I'm going to let you pick. There's two. You pick one. I want to see if she's going to pick the same one that everybody else picks.
Probably this one.
Yeah, it is. It was so cool when Matt was
So
here.
funny.
He says, "Hey, I think I can use that as a guitar pick." and he did. He started
did.
playing his guitar with it. It was great. So
That's
yeah,
so
that
funny.
like Logan Arntz. Logan. It's Logan Nickerson. Now he changed his name.
Mm-hmm.
Logan Nickerson is a race car driver. He was
Okay.
my first guest, and he was going to hang it in they call it the toter that hauls the race car and the camper
Sure.
and stuff.
Yeah.
And he's going to hang it in there, and when he's having a bad day,
Oh, I love
it's going to
that.
remind him to keep digging.
Yeah.
And that's a real popular term in racing.
Yeah.
Keep digging, especially
digging.
dirt racing. You know?
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
anyway,
Yeah, I'll
so
hold on
hang
to
that
this.
somewhere, and you know, maybe you could take it out to the property when they
Dig
do the groundbreaking.
Yes, I think it's a requirement.
Yeah, there you go.
That's awesome.
Makaela, love you. Thanks
you,
for all
man.
you're doing at Thrive. It's great, and thanks
Yeah.
for being here.
Thanks for having
Good
me.
stuff.
I
Good
had
stuff.
fun.
I can't wait to put it out there for the rest of the world to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Awesome.